foremost, very, very excited to see what these players have brought today. Tarkir Dragonstorm has made a pretty big impact in the modern format. I mean, definitely one of the sets that has had more of an impact than a lot of others in recent memory. And we're going to see one of those cards on the right hand side of your screen from Peter Tubergen on Jeskai Ascendancy, who we saw earlier today. This is kind of a different take on the affinity deck, but it's playing Narset Jeskai Waymaster, which is a powerful card that allows you to discard cards on your end step, draw a bunch of cards equal to the number of spells you played, and it's also playing Corey Steelcutter, which is I don't know if you know
Is that
this,
one
Drake,
good?
but that
I'm
card
I'm
is
curious about that card.
it's
I've
not
never read
bad.
it before. What is it? What is that? Does it do anything? I don't know. Equipment's bad, I hear, so whatever, Yeah, that card's obviously making waves in every format. It's legal. And so is Belcher. I mean, we've seen quite a bit of Belcher. I've seen some mono red takes, but here we see Austin actually kind of defaulting back to the blue shape. We saw, I believe it was Grayson Nimitz last year, kind of qualify for our championship on this deck featuring Tameshi. We're bringing that back here. We have 4 Tameshi in the main deck, does Austin, and he starts off very powerful. We got the Orderly Plaza tapped and the Suspend of Lotus Bloom. So that really sets you up for that explosive turn 4. There's a big Doomsday Clock there in exile for Austin. Peter, he's going to know that, and he's starting things off with his very powerful turn 1 play of Tamio Inquisitive Student.
Yeah, like you mentioned, this is sort of the more classic take on the Belcher. I have seen some lists, as you mentioned, pop up recently on Magic Online because we were talking in between, and I know you're a big fan of the Storm Scale Scion. So
Oh,
we've
yeah.
I've been seeing some lists online that are like half Ruby Storm, half Red Belcher, and those look kind of cool. So we do see the Belcher here. That's a pretty good one to hit off of the Thunder Trap
Yeah,
Trainer.
exactly how you
Um,
want to line this up off your Thunder Trap Trader on turn 2, where everything coming up Austin.
Oh yeah, and one thing I want to look towards is, now that it's face up, right? The Lotus Bloom is there. That's going to represent potential for 7 mana on turn 4, and just revealed the Belcher. So Peter knows everything is face up right now. You take a look at Peter's deck list here, looking for interaction. How can we stop this Belcher? And I got to be honest with you, Drake. I'm looking at this. I'm not seeing a lot. There's 2 Metallic Rebuke that can, be a mana leak that you can, cast off of Improvise. And then a cool thing that Peter could maybe do if, worst case scenario, is you can Flame of Anora the Bauble in the upkeep after it resolves. So it's sort of like burns Austin's 3 mana, so he won't actually have the 7 to go Belcher plus activate in the same turn.
Yeah, it's an important to 5-year interaction. In Portable Hole here, actually representing a piece of interaction, able to get rid of that Thunder Trap Trainer. That actually matters for the Flare of Denials. There's 4 of those in the main deck of Austin's deck. We've seen that come up over and over again. Just having these random objects around that you can sacrifice does matter. So even though the Portable Hole, the Thunder Trap Trainer's kind of already done its job. It found the Belcher. We've done that thing. And it's not like we're making the way for any kind of attacks. You do still want to get it out because if you find your interaction, you don't want Austin to have a lot to back it up, as Emery's going to join the party alongside the recently unbanned Mox Opal that managed to, take Modern by storm there for a little while. But now the Breach deck long gone, and we're back to this kind of stuff. Peter been a Mox Opal guy for as long as I've known him. He's always been playing
Oh
the
yeah.
Affinity decks, but this is a little bit of a different look from Peter than back when we used to battle together in the SCG days, as the backside of Seagate Restoration coming down as land number 3 for Austin. Down to 1 goes that Lotus Bloom.
This is sort of like Affinity with extra steps. You mentioned, the unbanning of Mox Opal really sort of a lot of people were, when that happened, were very interested in, at least the first couple of weeks playing these different style of Affinity decks, pairing it with like Urza Lord High Artificer, Thought Monitor, Kappa Cannoneer, and at the end of the day, after maybe a couple of weeks, people finally realized that Breach was just by far the best thing to do. So this, ever since Breach has been unbanned, it's sort of like, in a weird way, Mox Opal was unbanned again, because you really just couldn't play a deck that wasn't Breach for, the basically that 4 or 5 month period. So interesting to see, Mox Opal sort of, what can people do with without Breach? And Peter is definitely doing one of those things. You see the Core Steel Cutter in the graveyard. That is, we're not going to cast it. We're going to get the Bauble here.
Yeah, I think Peter kind of recognizing it's a little too slow. So this to me would signal that he doesn't have any of the interaction he needs yet, right? So that's what Mishra's Bauble, the fetch land and play. We have that kind of representing some looks at some additional interaction if we don't have it already, although we are looking at our opponent. So maybe we do. Gonna have to see, give a lot of thought to this turn. But like I said, if we're going for Mishra's Bauble instead of Corey Steelcutter, to me that signals, okay, I know the Corey Steelcutter is too slow. I need to find interaction as quickly as possible. And Bauble gives me another look.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, Peter doesn't really have a lot here in this
Yeah.
game one situation. It's a lot of just, hope I can kill you before you do your thing. It does have the two rebukes and the one flame of Venor. It's possible that one of those is in the hand. I could not tell you for the life of me what that card is, Drake.
We affectionately refer to these cards in a certain type of way that I'm going to refrain. I think this is a whir of invention.
That would
Yeah,
kind of
so here
make
we go. This
sense.
is a
Okay.
whir of invention here on end step. Going to be for 0, so we've seen this before. I believe Lotus Bloom, the only legal hit, checking for any artifact lands very quickly in the
I believe
main
so,
deck.
yep.
Yeah, it looks like only Lotus Bloom. So the second Lotus Bloom matters a lot, right? If you're against Jeskai Ascendancy, their only interaction is Metallic Rebuke. Having a backup Lotus Bloom, even against something like Flame of Venor, can't hit both of them. This is actually really good against any of the interaction that Peter might be able to assemble. Might force him to have 2 pieces, which is asking a lot.
The other thing that this could represent is that, Austin theoretically has access to 7 mana if he has an untapped land, right? But the Belcher deck, at least half of its lands enter I say lands, but half of its spells that are lands enter the battlefield tapped. So if Austin is in a spot where he has a bunch of tap lands in hand, it actually does need that Lotus Bloom in order to get the 10 mana. So you see here Peter fighting. Peter doesn't necessarily want to use the rebuke on just mana, and Austin actually fights over it, which sort of signifies to me that, he's worried about the potential of a second Metallic Rebuke as well.
Yeah, I think it also like we just mentioned, like Metallic Rebuke is really the best way Peter interacts. We know there's a Belcher, and he knows there's a Belcher. And Metallic Rebuke's the only way kind of to fight. Then it doesn't work. And yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and take a look at the deck. I mean, this is tough, right? This is a tough game one. This is why the blue Belcher decks were so good. Having Disrupting Shoal there to be able to back up your kills, that's so powerful. Flare of Denials, Force of Negations, all this interaction that you get baked in that the red builds and such don't get, really powers through these other combo decks that are kind of trying to cheat on their interaction a little bit. Like we mentioned, not a lot in Peter's main deck, as he's going to take, like I said, a look through his deck list. But yeah, I love this spot from Peter. Like, we're going to fight over this. Maybe you don't have land 4, and if you don't have land 4, then Lotus Bloom plus 3 lands isn't enough. So we kind of get it there, and the Metallic Rebuke is way worse after the Lotus Bloom. So I love the spot on the fight. He did a good job finding a piece of interaction, but as is often the case with this mono blue build, especially in game number 1, one piece of interaction is not going to be enough. And so that is going to wrap up game number 1. Going to go to Austin Desidder. Again, the pair down. Austin fighting for his top 8 potential here at 4-1. Peter does have a loss to give at 5-0, and maybe can still find a way to get a draw in, but is not necessarily. His tournament's not on the line here, but he's certainly had a great run so far, and I'm sure wants to keep that going into the top 8. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the sideboards again. Deck lists not working at the moment, so we're gonna read through and just kind of stick with me. I'm gonna read out loud as slowly as possible the sideboards here. We're gonna start with Peter because he did just get felled by the giant goblin cannon. So we're gonna start here with 1 Ashiok Dream Render, 4 copies of Consign to Memory, 2 Flame of Enor, 2 Flage, Titan of Fire's Fury, 2 Pyroclasm, 1 Shadow Spear, 1 Teferi Time Raveler, and 2 Wear Tear. Devin, how are you looking to improve on this new take on Jeskai Ascendancy in the Belcher matchup?
Yeah, so we mentioned Peter doesn't really have a ton in game one, but looking at this sideboard does have those 4 copies of Consigned to Memory. Those I think will be slam dunks here, being able to counter a Char Belcher for 1 mana. Past that, you could maybe go to Flame of Venor, just for that very off chance that either Austin has Belcher pass, or you get to tag the Lotus Bloom in the upkeep to prevent the activation. It's kind of narrow, but it could come up. And then the other card that's a slam dunk here is Teferi Time Raveler. Austin, be playing the blue Belcher deck. There's a ton of instant speed interaction, Force of Negation, Flare of Denial, Disrupting Shoal, and that one Teferi Time Raveler is going to do a lot of heavy lifting in the post board games.
Yeah, definitely looking to fight with, like you said, the counter instant speed kind of tricks and the counter magic and such. So the Teferi going to help back that up a lot. Makes a lot of sense to me. Let's go ahead and look at Austin's deck list. And by us, I mean me. And we're going to go ahead and read out the 15
I'll look at
sideboard
it.
cards here. Yeah, you can look at it too if you want. It's only for us. The private information. We got 2 copies of Commandeer, 4 copies of Consigned to Memory here as well. 2 Force of Negation, 2 Harbinger of the Seas, 2 Into the Flood Maw, 1 Basic Island, 1 Portable Hole, and 1 Tormod's Crypt for the Belcher sideboard. What do you want against this new take on? I call it Jeskai Ascendancy. There's only 1 in the deck. You can't see that, but there's only 1. This kind of new take of this weird prowess Jeskai Ascendancy matchup.
Yeah, it's interesting for Austin's side. So I think Austin's priority, number one priority, is just don't die, because a lot of Peter's best draws are going to be the ones that involve turn one Urza Saga paired with a Mox Opal, make a construct on 2, make a construct on 3, and just get him dead before, ideally by turn 4. That's what Peter's looking to do. So the cards that interact with the construct tokens, specifically the two here, the 2 Harbingers and the 2 Into the Flood Maws, I think I'm not entirely sure if you want to go towards Harbinger, but the nice thing about it is not only does it turn off the ability for Peter to access Urza Saga, honestly, the mana in the Jeskai deck is, outside of Mox Opal, is not fantastic. There's a lot of dual lands, not a lot of basic lands for Peter, so I could see some mix of those. It's possible maybe you want Flood Maw on the draw, Harbinger on the play, and then past that, I mean, you don't know how many counter spells that Peter has access to. So in the quote unquote dark, maybe you want to go towards something like Commandeer to fight over, if you expect a lot more counter spells. The really awkward part about Commandeer is it's not that good against consigned to memory, because usually there's only one legal target for the
Yeah.
consigned to memory. Past that, yeah, I think it's really just, maybe the Commandeers and then some sort of answer to Urza Saga, whether that be Harbinger or Floodmaw.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Mostly just kind of shuffling around the interaction you already have access to and the counter spells and such like that. So, I mean, this is really where we see an opportunity, I think, kind of objectively, where Peter should be better in the sideboard games. Now, he does need to win 2 of them, but I think he's improving more versus Austin, who's just kind of changing the text on some of his interactive slots already versus really adapting his game plan to what Peter has going on. Really, Austin's just looking for the right tools to do what he did in game 1. Punch through his combo. He had a great sequence. Like I said, that turn 1 Lotus Bloom, so important. Having another one off of the Whir of Invention, a big deal, and just having all that critical mass of mana for the turn 4, knowing that the Ascendancy deck wasn't really well set up to kill you on turn 4, the mix you want. Now we'll see, with Peter on the play, does that change? I mean, we have the potential to do things like turn 1 Corey Steelcutter, and at that point, maybe it is fast enough to go ahead and get Austin dead before anything else can matter. And I'm interested to see if that can kind of manifest here, because again, this Jeskai deck, not as much an Ascendancy main. You're not really just all in on the Ascendancy thing. You do have these Narsets for bursts of interaction. You do have the Corey Steelcutter is kind of what you got going on. And so it can be kind of a misnomer, even though it does have Jeskai Ascendancy stuff going on too.
It definitely feels like more of a Narset deck where you're pairing, Mishra's Bauble, Mox Opal, all that kind of stuff. I mean, the last time we saw Peter on camera, he drew 7 with Narset, and against, I believe it was against Garrick, and just absolutely buried the blue-white control players. So Narset looked real good the last time we saw it on Peter's side, and it does pair very well with Corey Steelcutter, because you have this turn where you like untap with Narset, do Cutter and some spells, dump some stuff out, attack for a little bit, and then you get to refill for next turn. And then when you have that grip full of cards for the next turn, you get a second prowess token, which represents so much more damage. So, Peter does have that ability to just sort of almost instantly kill the turn after an Narset comes down. But turn 1 Tamiyo is not necessarily the start that Peter wants here.
Yeah, not exactly the most explosive as far as getting Austin dead. However, if we do have some spats, like if you start fighting early over other stuff, it can flip your Tamiyo, rebuy your counter spells, that you can make the card matter. And it's certainly part of your plan as far as getting Mox Opal online and such. So it might still be important just for getting the mana sorted out. But yeah, not the most aggressive. If you're looking to kill Austin before he can kill you, this is not the way you're going to do it. So you need to buckle in and start finding some interaction. Although no Lotus Bloom, a big deal for Peter. Would maybe signal some words to look out for. Got to have ways to get ahead on mana if he's keeping even a 6. But yeah, turn 1 tap land is not exciting from Austin's side. As Tamiyo is going to go ahead and make a clue. We're going to crack that clue right now. Draw another card. That's card number 3, thanks to Bobble. So the Bobble plus your clue plus your draw for turn. We have flipped our Tamiyo Inquisitive Student on turn 2, and rolling up it goes.
Yeah, getting access to a Planeswalker on turn 2 already goes up to 4 loyalty. And I mean, in spots like this, especially with Austin not having the Lotus Bloom, it doesn't really have access to like the super fast start. Tamiyo, the ultimate, likely will win the game for Peter. Is going to be able to find enough interaction, just sort of have a handful of consigns and Metallic Rebukes, and can most likely fight through basically all of what Austin has.
I can imagine a choice here between Stern Scolding, Disrupting Shoal, and Whir of Invention. Really seems stuck on this decision. I can't imagine we're considering the Scolding, but it looks like Shoal and Whir both appealing. Again, to me, that signals maybe already having a Whir in hand, which would align with not having the Lotus Bloom on 1. And we do go ahead and go for the Shoal. So like I said, got to have some way to find a Lotus Bloom. in hand already, I think, for Austin. And now here we go with the Philology Archaeologist. Unfortunately, not the creature that has power, so we can't start pressuring the Tameo at all. Be hard to
Yeah,
do
well, I
anyway,
mean,
I guess.
yeah, Tamio would shut it down anyways. But I
Yeah.
wonder if that decision from Austin leads me to believe that, if you have the Belcher in hand, you're thinking about, okay, well, I could go Whir for Lotus Bloom and try to go off on turn 4, or potentially maybe a more reactive hand and is worried about, like, maybe has the Belcher and would rather go, okay, turn 4, Belcher plus Shoal to counter your consigned to memory, or something along those lines. So, I think that might signify that Austin maybe has the Belcher, but we'll have to see here.
I love Austin's style here. If I'm understanding correctly, I don't think he flips any of his MDFCs. He's just like, you know what I'm doing with
Love
this
it.
thing. It's a
Well, I
land.
think
Come on.
they're like triple or quadruple sleeve, so that would
Yeah, it
kind of
would be
be
like an
insane, right?
actual Herculean task to get these things out to flip them. He's like, come on, you know what this is. It's pretty clear what's going on here. So I love it. I love the style. Just I'm not flipping this garbage over and over again. It's not happening. As here's an instep Whir. Pretty much anybody could see this one coming. I mean, like I said, it's been really telegraphed since turn 1, basically, having such unexciting turn 1. So we found the Lotus Bloom. A land does represent the critical mass of 7 mana, which could allow for a kill. And with no land drop from Peter, I would be shocked if he wasn't rolled up with some interaction. Doesn't have lands, got to have spells.
Well, one thing I want to mention the timing on this, right? So Peter did play the Scalding Tarn for turn and went to end of turn fetch. Austin heads up in response to the fetch. You'll notice, Peter only had one artifact in the Hallowed Fountain untapped, went for that Whir of Invention while there was only 2 available quote unquote mana. So didn't have access to something like Metallic Rebuke. So
Sure.
Austin sneaking that Whir in there, and that's going to give him access to a lot of mana next turn. And that
Ooh,
is a repeal.
repeal the Lotus Bloom. That's a
We good.
nice use of it. All right, 4 of those in the main deck. Have to imagine if this is the interaction you're looking to line up, you're going to use all of them. Could crack it to deny Peter a card, or you could pick it up and look to suspend it. Yeah, it looks like we're just going to go ahead and sacrifice it. No card for you, says Austin. An interesting choice there, I
Yeah,
think.
would be really nice here for Austin if he had something like a Sink into Stupor, where you can sack the Lotus Bloom for mana, sort of, fizzle the repeal, and then sink the Tameo. And that, okay, it does not have the sink, but that would have been quite a blowout here for Austin if that was available, because that Tameo is getting really scary for Peter, and this Teferi is going to be yeah,
A
that's going to be a
huge
lot.
problem. Yeah, I mean, this disrupting shoal doesn't do anything if it resolves, so we need to reach for it now. And it looks like you were right on the Harbinger this season. That one's going to hit the exile zone with the disrupting shoal. A nice little use for it. If there's no saga stuff going on, you can just always pitch to your pitch spells. And that is how that's going to line up here. And now this game's getting interactive. It's getting grindy. We've seen this before from the Blue Belcher deck. It makes me, I was literally about to say, this feels like a Tameshi game. This feels like the exact type of game where Tameshi starts to shine. Is, oh, okay, I face a little bit of interaction. My Lotus Bloom's in the graveyard. What am I going to do? And then it's like, all right, Tameshi, whatever happens from here, I just basically win as long as I can find a piece of white mana. Get a look at
Yeah,
Tameshi Reality Architect here on screen.
that's the awkward part here is Austin, had the Lotus Bloom, was planning on setting up going for Lotus Bloom to Meshi next turn, but now because he had to sacrifice the Lotus Bloom, doesn't have white mana, and he's just going to pack it into the Tambia.
Yeah, Tameo Ultimate there. That is going to provide, you get to draw cards equal to half the number of cards in your library, rounded up, and you get an emblem with no max man size. So for the rest of the game, Peter just has more interaction. Now it can start deploying all these zeros. It basically is just lights out. And so, I mean, interesting. We talked about Tameo as not being the fastest thing to kill, and it wasn't, but it was able to be fast enough in order to get the job done with a little bit of interaction. It needed some help. It needed some backup in the form of some counter spells and such. And Peter did a good job assembling that. But I mean, Tameo flip on turn 2, tick up, tick up, tick up. All right, ultimate time. Like, that's good enough to win. And to game 3 we go. Looks like Peter either has a judge question or has to use the bathroom, both entirely valid. And so we again have a little bit more time to kill. I don't want to go through the labor of, it's a quick bathroom break. I don't want to go through the labor of reading through all of the sideboard cards once again, but talk to me. In game number 2 and 3, we were talking about with the Belcher deck potentially moving some of the cards around with the Harbingers versus into the Flood Maws. You think we're going to see that here based on how game number 2 played out?
Potentially, I think on the play, Austin just wants more, like to be a little bit more mana efficient. So, for example, maybe he can set up a turn where, like, turn 3, he has 3 mana, he goes Dwyer Disruption plus into the Flood Maw or something along those lines. So potentially, the Harbingers were there, and maybe he just wants to be like progressing his game plan a little bit more and just kind of leaning more in on the really fast combo, protecting that with counter spells. So Yeah, I don't know if the Harbingers will stay in, especially given that game, right? That game wasn't really even about Urza Saga, and you know, even with a Harbinger on the battlefield, it seemed like Peter could still cast most of his spells. And again, the awkwardness against Mox Opal. So we'll have to see exactly what Austin decides to do there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I think this is a really cool back and forth, really quick games too, which has, I think, been the state of Modern for a while, but Corey Steelcutter across all formats. And we were talking about for the show about how I'm dying on turn 4 in Standard all the time to this Corey Steelcutter card. It's obviously showing up every format it's legal in, and speeding games up. So I'm interested to see across the board how the formats respond. Are we going to try to outpace this? We're going to try to interact with this. It's going to be interesting to see. And I mean, here as we're seeing a top 8 shake out, doesn't look like a lot of things are beating it. There's a lot of Is It Prowess in the top tables. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of it in the top 8. And for now, it doesn't look like our players here in Chicagoland have showed up with the tools necessary to beat Is It Prowess, but that's not going to be true forever. And who knows? Maybe we can still have a few surprises left in the tournament. But I'll tell you, Prowess already an early front runner for me. Now, keep in mind, this is a modern 10K showdown. So as it is a showdown event, the winner will be directly qualified for our end of the year championship. Joining the other 4 qualified players, of course, Theo Jung, your champion from this year. And then, of course, Grayson Nemitz, and we got Feng Chen and Garrick Alford. We can go ahead and show, some of that leaderboard. Here we go, coming up. We're going to show that. The players are highlighted here. We got Fan Chen Yang, Grayson Nemitz on the leaderboard there, Theo Jung, and Garrick Alford, not necessarily as high up on the leaderboard, it looks like, but both those players qualified as well. Ben Unger, the highest ranking player currently on the outside looking in. So a lot of points race, and you see how tight those top 4, 5 players are, 42, 39, 38, 38, 37, already a tight race for the top of the leaderboard here in season number 1 of our NRG Championship Series. So kind of keeping that in mind, we're still looking to qualify a player today, but also there's some points very critical to some of the names that we've seen kind of throughout the day, some of the names we're going to continue to see, and some people that are a little further down that may be on the outside looking in right now. So a lot on the line for these players outside, of course, the $10,000 prize pool and all the things that come with that. We know when you win a Showdown event, you also get an Inkling Customs token. So trophy, custom token, invitation to every event possible. You get all these. Yeah, we get a slide here. We can show some of these tokens off. Let's go. Inkling Customs, a master at her craft. You get a token with your likeness representing a token in Magic that you can use and, of course, be handed out at our events. And you can check her out at inklingcustoms.com. But that's on the line for our players as well. So, there's a lot on the line. Even if you showed up with prowess, you didn't show up with prowess, you showed up to win. And there's a lot on the line for these players as we're getting towards the end of season number 1. I believe our penultimate event here with our last one being a team event, our team showdown event in Indianapolis. We'll talk about that one a little bit later as these players are shuffling up now. But already an exciting season 1, I would say. And like you said, this Dragonstorm Tarkir set has been a personal favorite of mine. I've been playing more limited than ever before. I've really, started to take a look at Standard again, where I had been not paying very much attention for a long time. Has done a lot to reinvigorate my interest in Magic. I don't know how much that aligns with me really enjoying what's going on with Corey Steelcutter and all those things, casting a bunch of spells. Is it Mage at Heart? So that might be a big part of it. I've heard some complaints from the people that like to cast larger spells than 1 mana spells that cantrip. But overall, I really liked this set. And it's made some interesting Magic to watch.
It is really hard to cast big stuff right now. I will say that. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
that is
are you suffering? Are you suffering trying to cast?
No. Stuff? I'm the Izzet guy. Trust me. I'm the one playing the Corey Steelcutters. I am in heaven right now. I will say I have a lot of nostalgia for the previous Tarkir set. That's like, when I was playing the most amount of like Standard, like going to FNMs, PTQs and stuff, and, casting some Siege Rhinos and all that. I miss those days.
PPTQs back in the day. You remember the blue-black control deck? That was like right when we were playing with like Ugin, flashing in Pearl Lake Ancient.
Perilous Vault.
Oh, yeah. Talk to me. Perilous Vault. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Here we go. Crux of Fate. Blow up all those things. See you later. Not a chance.
But yeah,
it's time because that's a card that they printed. Sure.
Oh, yeah. I know. Just it's funny because like Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise were played in Standard, but they weren't, they weren't bannable. They weren't as messed up as they were with format like Fetchlands. But and
you're saying Fetchlands,
the funny thing is we still had Fetchlands.
Yeah. Well, we had Fetchlands, just we didn't have any cheap cantrips. There's nothing going on there. I remember Dig Through Time being the better of the bunch until right up to the very end. There was like some prowess decks with like that. Who's that like blue red 1/3 flying homie with like prowess or whatever?
Oh,
I forgot
No,
that
you're
card's name.
the Jeskai Ascendancy tokens deck, which is like Hordeling Outburst, Stoke the
That
Flames,
too.
Treasure
Yeah, there
Cruise.
you
That deck
go.
looks sweet.
It was sweet. I was mono redding people a ton in that format too. I won my first PPTQ ever on just like mono red stuff. Michael Braverman was like beating up people at an SCG, like the steel cutters and Zergos and all this stuff. I like traded for it for my local group. Had this like mono red deck. Man, those are the days. Tarkir was so sweet, so
I know.
powerful for its time too. And now new Tarkir makes it look like a joke.
Yeah, there like I was saying earlier, there is a lot like a surprising number of cards from this set that are making a splash in modern. You know, Corey Steel Cutter, Jessica or Narset with the Jeskai Waymaster. We see in
Mhm.
this match alone, there's Stormscale Scion,
Mm,
there's Ugin in the Eldrazi decks. There's just so many
mhm.
things to like actually cook up with, and it's refreshing to see after maybe a couple of sets where there wasn't nearly as many impactful cards for an eternal format like modern.
Yeah, Aether Drift had like stock up, period. Which, like, sure,
Yep.
I guess, but still sweet. Speaking of cards, both these players have decided that they just don't want to play with any cards in their opening hand. Both down to 5 card hands, it looks like. I think we just
I
revealed
saw Thundering
two
Falls. I don't know
cards.
about you.
I think these players are lamenting what's going on here with the mulligans. I guess both players, you know, on these combo decks that have weird land situations, only 19 lands in Peter Tabergen's deck, and obviously 0
How many?
lands
Yeah, I
with
was gonna say how many lands are in Austin's deck.
it's a complicated question, okay? And all right, well, we still found a good turn one. We've seen this before. Orderly Plaza plus the turn one Lotus Bloom sets up for a very easy and smooth turn 4 kill with the Mono Blue Belcher deck, provided we can hit our land drop. So the only 3 cards left for Austin. So not currently possible to have all of the lands you need plus Belcher. So we're gonna need a few good draws. As
Well, if
the
you
Tameo that we've had on turn one every game for Peter Tabergen, won game number 2. Have it again here.
if you think about it, Lotus Bloom effectively represents 3 lands, right? So if you mulligan to 5 and you have a Lotus Bloom as 3 of your lands, that's kind of like you didn't mulligan at all, right?
So this is like the Tron math thing, right? Where if you mulligan and then you have 3 lands, it's like 7 lands or whatever, and so we've done it. But the problem is, and stay with me here, you can't tap the Lotus Bloom again.
True.
You don't get to do it twice, and that's where it maybe gets away from us a little bit as far as being a land. Although if you just kill the other player with something like a Charbelcher,
Ah,
then it doesn't matter anymore. We've done it.
there is no other turn after that.
Yeah, so functionally it was a land, and there you go. As Thunder Trap Trainer on turn number 2 for Austin, very powerful, and looks like we have another decision here. Giving it some thought.
Yeah, I can't
Huh.
quite get a good look of what Austin's looking at. I see a whir because I see the yellow border. I could tell you there's a whir in that pile
Hey, it
somewhere.
helps us once you know what it is. If it's his
That
only
is
yellow
true.
card or whatever, we know that's where.
I know that's a Charbelcher, and that
Belcher,
is
yeah,
what
I
Austin's
know
going
that
to
art
take.
anywhere.
That's a pretty good one. So now we have access to 5 mana potentially. If we have, like you said, 2 more lands, we're good to go. But it's possible that Peter maybe on the draw mulliganing more aggressively for one of those sideboard cards. And was specifically with Austin on 5. Like the Belcher deck has those free interaction, like Flare of the Now, right? And Belcher with Flare Sack Trainer backup is very powerful. But because Austin's mulligan to 5, it's going to be a lot harder for him to set up Belcher plus interaction with 2 fewer cards.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing, right? Like Peter, when he's mulliganing, turn 1 land Tameo, that's fine. Maybe draw a few cards, unmulligan, that's great. But if you find one piece of interaction, that's going to be really especially good against Austin's mulligans, because Austin still, once he's mulliganing low, is just trying to maintain a hand that produces a kill. We're trying to maintain our Belcher plus lands plus Lotus Bloom. All right, let's make my deck do something that isn't embarrassing. That doesn't leave a lot of room for the interactive spells, especially if they take 2 slots with something like a Disrupting Shoal or what have you. So I would say the low mulligans, especially with Peter being on the draw, actually favors Peter a little bit more. I'm interested
Yep.
to see if that manifests, or if maybe Austin has it on turn 4, doesn't go for it, maybe waiting for a little bit more interaction, waiting for a better spot, because we're not under any pressure, really.
Well, I see there's a die over to the left of Peter's side, and that is the number of spells that he's cast this turn. So, and there's 3 mana. I think we know what's about to happen here. I believe
Oh, is
Peter
it
may have a
Narset time?
Narset. Yeah, I think it's
Ooh.
Narset time. But 2 cards in hand, discard 1, draw 4. That I don't know about you, but that seems like a pretty good exchange to me.
I would take that rate. I would take that rate, especially knowing that there's 2 more turns on suspend. You could put the shields down this turn to draw a pile of cards from Narset, and then now you are completely refilled. And I mean, the power of Narset, Jeskai Waymaster, kind of on full display here in game number 3 for Peter Tabergen.
And Narset also flips the Tameo, so now you get to
Oh,
untap
sure. Yeah,
Tameo.
why not?
It is awkward because the Narset flips the Tameo on Peter's end phase, and that's very important because Peter didn't have the opportunity to plus it that turn, which now means he couldn't get like the repeal back or something if he wanted to have a piece of interaction. Because repeal, given that Austin is so low on cards, repeal on that Lotus Bloom is kind of a blowout.
Yeah, that's going to be really good. And I mean, we've seen that interaction before. 4 copies in Peter's deck. Not that hard to have another one. And it looks like Austin might have missed a land drop, and we're back to Peter already. Corey Steelcutter, the follow up. That's going to close the game very quickly. Mox Opal ready to trigger it right away. 2 spells for Narset as well. So that's down to up to. And yeah, things are starting to look like they're coming up very, very nicely. Mox Amber number 2 showing up. Going to legend rule out the other one. We gotta do that first.
We gotta stack one of those.
Yeah, gotta get rid of the other one. Yeah, all right, we've accomplished that, and that's gonna add Emery, which is a 4th spell again. 4 cards to the bin.
Yeah, it's just because because
Wow.
this Jeskai deck has so many free spells or cheap spells, it's like when you have the Narset going, it's so easy, even after you've drawn 4 cards, to just completely unload your entire hand, which is exactly what Peter's doing here. Now, granted, we do know about the Belcher in Austin's hand. If Peter does not draw a counterspell or a repeal, Austin may get to resolve that Belcher next turn. So this is going to be, I mean, he's looking at 5
right
cards.
now, right?
So
he's getting
yeah,
5 looks, which is a lot. That's a ton. But we know
lot.
there's nothing guaranteed right now.
Yep.
Because here's beats. A lot of beats.
I guess
too.
actually it may not matter. It may actually not matter because I think this is an attack for 6, which puts Austin's to 8. And then even I get you can chump block with the trainer. I was going to say,
yeah, I think you want to block
Austin,
because make him draw spells or something. There's a lot of them.
Right.
You need to get kind of lucky here, but at least the chump block here but it's trample too. It only blocks 2 points, so you could block 3. You can't even block the full 6. What is going on with this Corey Steele? Why does it need trample?
The Narset doesn't have trample. We can chump block the Narset.
Well, you'd rather chump block the like 6/6 token or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I'm wondering if Austin even has enough life total to survive because he doesn't have enough mana to go Belcher plus activate. So even if you can resolve the Belcher next turn, you still are at the mercy of Peter getting one more combat step. And I'm not convinced that Austin can survive the other combat step, even if Peter bricks on these 5 cards.
Peter has a lot of looks. He left up his Mox Opal, so that's a piece of mana, and he has 2 untapped artifacts thanks to the Clue and the Corey Steelcutter. So we actually have Metallic Rebuke up and Repeal up. So we have a lot of looks and a lot of hits. Consign, of course, out of the sideboard. 4 of those are hits as well. That's, I mean, you need so many bricks. Given that he's already bricked the first 5 times on the first Narset suite there.
There's the Rebuke.
And there's a Rebuke on the blue, and that's brutal. That might just be good enough on its own.
Yeah, presumably you would imagine Peter has access to enough spells to kill with the cutter here because you can even Emery back a second cutter. That's the first spell for the turn, and then any other spell in hand gets you 2 more tokens, and they both have haste for some unknown reason, and you just kind of go off from there.
Good grief. I mean, such a powerful demonstration of the Corey Steelcutter card in Modern. We've seen it in a lot of prowess setups. This is like a little bit like a hybrid. I like these more than the traditional prowess decks. The prowess decks look a little too easy to target to me, whereas this having so many pivots between the Saga stuff, the Ascendancy stuff, the Tameo Emery stuff, we have enough other stuff going on. We can say, hey, Corey Steelcutter is basically a prowess strategy on its own. So we just play 4 of those with some zeros, and that's we're a prowess deck. But also, you just get all these other angles with interaction and just a lot of staying power with card advantage. I really like the look of this Jeskai Ascendancy deck. Something I've seen. I know Andre Maguchi's been playing a lot of it as well. This deck has just looked so dominant to me, and I think might be the long-term look of these prowess decks as the format starts to shake out a little bit more. Just because it's going to be more resilient to hate, I would imagine.
Yeah, and the one really interesting thing that I like about these decks is they're playing 4 repeals. And repeal is not only like, repeal plus any of your zeros, Bauble, Amber, Opal is a way to get double spell for Cutter, but it's also a way to get 2 more spells for Narset. So the repeals, even though they're maybe not the the flashiest interaction. Repealing a Monastery Swiss Spear, still not that bad. So it's a reasonable defensive card, but also just works so well with so much of your engine pieces that I like it a lot.
And maybe I'm just old. It reminds me of vintage. Like we're playing with a bunch of Moxen.
Yeah.
Like they used to play Hercule's Recall with your Monastery Mentors. I mean, talk about old Tarkir cards, right? Like Monastery Mentor, Hercule's Recall, all your stuff back, play it all again, make a gajillion dudes. It's like the same kind of concept here, right? Corey Steelcutter, we're just gonna make a bunch of prowess dudes. You use your repeals, pick them all up, play them all again, blah blah blah. Like this feels vintage-esque, and here we are in the modern format. And that's anytime you get to play a vintage deck in another format, I think that's kind of what you want to be doing from my analysis of things.
The only thing I could think of that Austin could have here, and I guess it still probably wouldn't be enough, is the Veil, which is the land, one of the ones that enters the battlefield tapped. That it's 2 mana instant, give your opponent's creatures -2/-0. I don't know if that can save us, but maybe.
I mean, if we had it last turn, I think we would have played it as a land, so we would have had to draw it
Sure.
this turn.
Yeah.
And then does that even keep us alive when Narset's going to draw 4.8 billion cards? I don't know about that. I've stopped doing any kind of prowess math. I assume this die is accurate. This is just
Maybe a Flood
500
Maw.
damage. Sure, yeah, Flood Maw, that's
Flood Maw
kind
one
of
of the
something.
tokens,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
all right, you're cooking. Chump Block, the un-Corey Steel Cuttered one. Flood Maw, one other thing. Okay, we're revealing cards. It's yeah, it's a word, it's a Belcher and Tezzeret the Seeker. Yeah, none of those cards are gonna get the job done. And Peter Tabergen, a pretty dominant victory there in game number 3 on a low mulligan. I figured that it would end up favoring Peter, just like we said. Not really easy to get the right mix with some counterspell backup. Peter ended up having a Metallic Rebuke, which really Austin couldn't account for being on a low mulligan, and then from there things just kind of fell apart. And this Just Guy Ascendancy deck trudges on to 6-0. I think we're going to be seeing a little bit more of Peter in the top 8, which I'm happy for him. You know, fan of Peter myself. Like I said, he's been in the game as long as I have, and has been mock opening people for as long as people have let him. So he's got to root for, but Austin's still a great run with Belcher. And I believe we have a time-shifted match to watch too. So the action doesn't even stop here for round number 6 of the Showdown. We're going to go ahead and pivot over to one of our championship competitors from last year, sporting my apologies, his jacket there. Grayson Nemitz, previously a Belcher Master, qualified with that deck, has pivoted over to the Is It Prowess deck versus Devin Slater, who we've seen before today already on Orzhov Flicker. Deafening Silence, a great start for a Prowess for the Prowess matchup. I have to imagine Devin probably knew what was going on here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting matchup where, Grayson's side of things really just wants to try to be as aggressive as possible. I want to take a look at Grayson's build real quick. Yeah, Grayson is playing the build with 3 copies of Violent Urge. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, if Devin has enough of the interaction stuff like Solitude, Ephemerate, things like that, to see if he has enough to kind of play through a lot of that, the prowess creatures, and see if we can keep up a Corey Steelcutter.
So the pips are actually wrong. This is game number 2, which makes a lot more sense. My comment there with the deafening silence is like, geez, this is aggressive.
Yeah, not main deck.
There's 3 of those in the sideboard, like you said. Those are in the sideboard. Grayson did win game number 1, so this is game number 2. Devin on the play there with a great start. Aether Vial plus the deafening silence here, facing down a Dragon's Rage Channeler and a Monastery Swift Spear. So, able to kind of sequence the creature plus non-creature spell on turn 2. Really what you want to do in the face of a deafening silence if you can't directly answer it. Go ahead and deploy another threat plus cast your non-creature spell, cash that in early, start to build towards this Dragon's Rage Channeler being a real threat. But now things start to get very, very real for the Flicker deck with a Vial on 2 mana up, and a bunch of cards in hand. That spells Trickery to me. Can Grayson cover whatever could be coming at instant speed from Devin Slater?
It is pretty funny, the turn after you cast your Rule of Law, to have your opponent double spell immediately on the next turn. I find that kind of interesting. And that's kind of, what, like here, for example, Grayson is still casting 2 spells a turn, even in the face of this deafening sound. So silence gets you some of the way there. But if you don't have an answer for these creatures, Grayson has already a huge battlefield. I can't quite tell if we have Delirium. I think it's just land sorcery, so not quite yet. But yeah, just as a bunch of ways to make sure that we can still attack there, attack through this and sort of play through this deafening silence.
Yeah, like you said, I mean that's the price you pay when you play with the 1 mana rule of law versus the 3 mana rule of law. Solitude is looking to help solve some problems, and Ephemerate going to help as well. So we get to double spell here as well. We get to pitch cast our Solitude as our creature, and then non-creature we're going to go ahead and play Ephemerate, which will flicker the Solitude, get rid of another threat. And that solves a lot of the problem here for Devin. And it's going to answer the Dragon's Rage Channeler here on upkeep, as here comes the Ephemerate. We're talking about the Aether Vial trigger. I believe these are both upkeep triggers. I think we can stack these how we
You can
want.
stack them how you want them, yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
that's what's going
think.
on here. I mean, I could do. Let's look. Let's give a quick look at Ephemerate.
Yeah, rebound is
Beginning of your
upkeep.
next upkeep. Yep. And then beginning of upkeep is what Vial says as well. So I think we're just clarifying what's going on there because you get to sequence those however you want. And a little response here. Maybe a little lightning bolt action.
Yeah, it's interesting. Grayson, because we led on the preordained before combat, if Grayson did have a bolt in hand, couldn't cast it last turn, but does have the potential here to cast the bolt. And, if he does have a removal spell in for the Solitude, he knows that Devin can't have another Ephemerate because the Deafening Silence is, both players. So that Ephemerate's going to be the only non-creature spell that Devin can cast. And
Unholy Heat is going to be the cast from Grayson. And then looks like
ooh.
I can't get a look at what the response is
We
here.
vialed in Flicker Wisp to Flicker Wisp the Solitude in response to the heat.
Ugh.
So
Yeah,
that was a beatdown.
that's just not weak. Yeah, that's strong, and that's the problem too. I think that's part of why we clarified with the vial so much because you get to roll it up to 3, and then you get to represent things like Aven Interrupter. You get to
Yep.
represent, like you said, Flicker Wisp, just all kinds of problems. And these are the tricks that really these kinds of Aether Vial Flicker Wisp decks have been known for their entire existence in Modern. I mean, Hate Bearers have been a thing in various forms throughout the history of Modern. Here, this deck has taken a little bit more of a flicker look with things like Overlord of the Baelmerk and all those kinds of things. Phalia, both supported in 4-ofs. It's kind of the new look, but still has a lot of those same testaments. No longer are we doing the Tidal or Scholar thing, but we still have a lot of the Flicker Wisp trickery going on. And yeah, that's going to be really, really effective. And the exiles mattering here as well, because Delirium's still not online because all the creatures have gone to exile. Just a really tough spot here for Grayson.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, that's why the ordering of the triggers last turn definitely mattered because if Devin had not resolved the vial first, would not have been able to put in the Flicker Wisp. And I mean, Grayson's still doing a decent job. He's been able to double spell turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4 through this Deafening Silence, but only I believe one card left in hand, and is going to need to be able to trigger the cutter next turn. Ideally, you go like second Slick Shot plus Cantrip. That gets you another token, gets you a lot of power on the Slick Shot show-offs. Maybe even Slick Shot plus Kill Spell on Flicker Wisp could be good. And I'll have to see what Grayson has here.
Yeah, I think getting rid of the Flicker Wisp is going to be an important part of the equation. Or, I mean, you could also do some cute stuff like moving your Steel Cutter over to the show off. That way you can just trample through with big. But either way, I mean, we really need to find an answer to this Deafening Silence. Otherwise, things like our Expressive Iterations, which are some of our best ways to get card advantage, if we even have them still in the deck, because, I mean, they're obviously pretty bad against things like Aven Interrupters and Deafening Silences, what have you. That's your forms of card advantage for the most part, outside of just having a low land count. And here comes the Aven Interrupter. That's going to interrupt this lightning bolt. We do still get triggers. We do still get credit for casting a spell, as we are going to move the Corey Steelcutter over to the Slick Shot show off, it looks like, and beatdowns. 2/2 prowess, and then I believe 4 power?
4/3.
Well, these
It's
looks like
4/3.
appealing blocks to me. We can put our Interrupter in front of the token and the Flicker Wisp in front of the Slick
Just
Shot.
trade.
Well, yeah, that seems okay. Maybe we want to hold on to the Interrupter in case we want to flicker it. Yeah, it looks like we're going to hold on to the Interrupter at least, but trading off the Flicker Wisp, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of trample damage is going to come through, but the Slick Shot is answered, and with very little gas left in the tank. Oh, and here we go. Witch Enchanter to pick off the Corey Steelcutter. Blit. That's pretty strong.
Yeah, and it's like without the Corey Steelcutter from here, what could Grayson even find? Expressive is still probably his best top deck, but
Yeah,
given the given the Deafening Silence, it's like you have to hit a creature off of it. You're not getting a cutter token. This seems like a really brutal spot here. I think we're going to be going to game 3 in just a minute.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, really, this has just been a surgical dismantling of Grayson's strategy here from all the way in turn one. I mean, and I really want to call out Aether Vial's impact here. I mean, this
Mhm.
card has really fallen off. There was some messed up stuff going on in Modern with Solitude and Fury and all this kind of stuff. And back when I still had a Twitter account, I was a big fan of the Fury ban because, like, okay, now we can play with Aether Vial again. What does that look like? And it was quiet for a while, but here we're finally getting to see its former glory kind of in action, really allowing you
I
to get
mean,
ahead. And even though the Izzet deck is cheating on mana a lot with just having powerful spells, we're cheating on mana with Aether Vial, and it, boy, does this look lopsided as a result.
yeah, Grayson did find the expressive and did hit a creature off of the expressive, but from here it's like you have Channeler Prowess token still really far behind on the battlefield. I think the card in hand that he picked up was a Bolt, so that
Okay.
at least gives you a little bit of something for next turn. But yeah, it's like from here, what does the game even look like for Grayson? Like, what does a winning game look like for Grayson? I don't know if I can answer that question. But yeah, this deafening sounds from, ever since it was cast very early in the game has just been just hampering Grayson's plays. Unable to, and I say unable to double spell, even though he did
He deals with like
really,
three
he
turns
did,
in a row.
yeah, he did. It
Really,
just,
yeah.
yeah,
It was some awkward sequencing. So that, like, the Solitude thing really wouldn't have been able to happen, right? Because the Lightning Bolt would have picked it off right there. So that's
right.
the first spot where that Deafening Silence really started to shine. But it's really the conjunction. I think really the two turn one plays that have kind of snowballed for Devin, those two 1 mana plays, sorry, being Aether Vial and Deafening Silence have really been the entire equation here as we're rolling it up to
Oh,
5.
Vial
Okay.
up to 5. Let's
What's
go.
a 5? Overlords? Okay. It's
Or
Overlord
Solitude.
time and Solitude time. Okay. Okay. Jeez. Fatal Push as well. We're going to Lightning Bolt something in response. Go ahead and Surveil a Bauble to the graveyard. Down goes the Dragon's Rage Channeler. And here comes some beatdowns. Devin really in no rush. Drawing very well. Only stopped at 3 lands. That's really, you mentioned what does the game look like? Well, Devin needs to draw about 8 lands in a row.
Well,
It's how this
I
needs to
mean,
happen.
there's another expressive, and Grayson hit 3
I think it's
non-creatures.
3
I think it was,
spells.
yeah, Bolt, Growth, another expressive. So I guess you put the expressive in hand for next turn. The bolts aren't really, yeah, he's gonna take the bolt. Interesting. Okay. Maybe he just wants to kill the creature and hope that Devin doesn't have any more creatures. Which, I mean, on one card, probably doesn't have a lot of threats. Well, there's a failure.
What's
Never mind.
Felia? Okay. So we took that up to 5 with the Felia coming in. So, I mean, it's a good Felia. It's got a lot of pressure here. Not a lot else going on for it, really, but I mean, some pressure. And we drew another Aether Vial. Okay, so that's step 1. If you're Grayson, this is step 1. You need Tevin to start drawing mana sources. Draw more Aether Vials, draw more lands. I need to get out of this. Now, the problem with the Interrupter with the Express Iterations, it makes the card that you exile cost 2 more. So we exiled the Mutagenic Growth. Couldn't cast it anyway, but it makes everything cost 2 more. And it looks like we drew another removal spell. Okay. All right. That looked like a spell. It's Corey Steelcutter.
Ooh, you got a creature, maybe?
I don't think so.
Interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
wonder.
interesting that we cast it, given that we
Yeah, I was
couldn't
gonna
make it.
say, yeah, if
Yeah.
if maybe Grayson holds it to then if he finds a creature later on can get a trigger off of it because I mean, with no pressure from Devin, like you do have a little bit of time. You draw a creature next turn, you go cut a creature, have 2 bodies in play. Maybe you find a cantrip the next turn, and like maybe that kind of snowballs cantrip into another creature after that. But now really just cutting off the ability, unless the last card in hand is another non-creature, and he says,
I think
well,
that
if I
has to be
draw
the
a creature,
case,
I
yeah.
can just double spell anyways, because I think he picked up a slick shot this turn.
Yeah, it looked like a creature, but let me be Dragon's Rage. No, you're right. Slick shot. You got it in 1 there. So that's gonna be plotted.
Interesting.
Interesting. So
Yeah,
that
so
makes me think the last card in hand is a piece of interaction of some kind that you don't want to spew off, maybe like an Unholy Heat.
yeah.
4 of
Because I
those in the
think
sideboard. Looks like he brought him in.
Because even if it was a bolt, you might just fire it off there, right? You go slick shot bolt. That's going to be 5 damage plus the bolt is 8. That puts Devin to 5.
All right. Well, this is what it looks like for Grayson to win, right? The last 3 draw steps for Devin before this one have been land, Aether Vial. So that's what you need. You need Devin to draw some mana sources. The problem was he was just operating with
Oh,
Aether Vial and 3 lands and just drawing only spells. You need that to not happen, and you need to draw good spells, which more or less has happened. Here comes
I
Slick
think
Shot.
Grayson drew
Here comes
another.
Slick Shot number 2.
Ooh, okay. So that's what, 4 damage?
4 right now. Any spell turns up the heat quite a bit. Oh, maybe we drew a spell. Devin drew Bowmasters.
Bowmaster.
Okay.
So if you assume that Grayson Oh, I guess we're locked anyways, right? Because we cast the cutter this turn.
Yeah.
So
No, we cast the
or
cutter last turn.
no, we cast
We've
two
only
slick
cast the slick
shots.
shot this turn, so a spell's good,
Okay.
and it's consigned to memory to consign the trigger. That's
Okay.
awesome. So
Wait,
okay, we
that's
get
huge
prowess
because
and
now
super
it's
prowess.
this is 9 damage coming across, and Devin doesn't have the token. So, I mean, Devin could take 9 and go to 4. Doesn't have any good blocks because the Bowmaster would only be, saving 1 damage. This is actually
This
a
is
winnable
huge.
game for Grayson.
Yeah, this is insane. I mean, we literally couldn't even think of really ways that Grayson gets out outside of Devin bricking a bunch. He has, and Grayson has found 2 slick shots and a Corey Stone Cutter in that time. A spell here might just end the game. It's
How about an
expressive
expressive
iteration.
iteration?
That's it. Grayson's
Oh
gonna
my
win 2 games
god.
to 0. Look at him chuckling. He can't believe his eyes. Underneath a deafening silence, the entire game wins it 2 games to 0 over Devin Slater in
Wow.
a a dominant performance.
That was
This
impressive.
Is It Prowess deck is messed up. It's so messed up.
Yeah.
And we're going to be seeing, I think, a lot of it through the rest of the day. I'm into it. This stuff is really powerful. And watching it operate underneath all that hate, I mean, literally, you and I were in this booth just doomsaying that entire game. And Grayson did what Grayson does, wins from impossible spots. I've seen him do it before. I see him do it again. I'm going to start calling him Houdini. I don't know how he gets out of these spots, but he always does.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. I mean, there were several points in that game we thought it was just absolutely over. And like Grayson, like we said, Grayson was still able to keep up in the early turns, double spelling, getting those chip shots in, and then Grayson, he found what I think he found 3 expressives that game, the double slick shots at the right time, had even the consign for the Bowmaster trigger, that alone represented I think 6 damage on that one
Yeah.
combat step. Just absolutely a crazy game there for Grayson.
Yeah, it was absurd, and yeah, an incredible performance. The Is It Prowess deck, we're going to be seeing a lot more of it through the rest of the day, but that will conclude round number 6 for us. Again, there are 8 rounds of Swiss today, and they'll be cutting their top 8, but bringing you a champion today. But there's a lot more Magic to be played before then, and the top 8 is starting to take a little bit of shape as we see Peter Jabergen now at 6-0, and then of course Grayson Nemitz as well, also at 6-0. Both those players looking very likely to be able to draw their way, maybe even take a loss, but definitely be in the top 8 contention at the very least. So a little bit more Magic coming your way here in round number 7 in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back very shortly.